Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ilman nafi'a wa rizqan tayyiba wa amalan mutaqabbala. Allahumma faqihna fi din wa allimna ta'wil ya Rabbil alameen. Alhamdulillah, we've started back today inshallah, and we will start with the book of funerals, Kitab al-Janaiz. In the book that we are continuing, of Fiqh, Umdatu Al-Fiqh by Ibn Qudamah Al-Maqdisi, which is a book on Hanbali Fiqh. The author, rahimahullah, Ibn Qudamah, he says, Kitab al-Janaiz, the book of funerals. And he says under this chapter, وَإِذَا تُيُقِّنَ مَوْتُهُ غُمِضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ وَشُدَّ لَحْيَاهُ وَجُعِلَ عَلَى بَطْنِهِ مِرْآةٌ أَوْ غَيْرِهَا. He says that if his death is ascertained, his eyes should be closed, his jaws should be tied, and a mirror or another heavy object should be placed on his abdomen. Death is something that it's inevitable that we all will face. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every soul shall taste death. And it's something that a lot of us, we shy away from speaking about, we shy away from preparing. And we feel that we're going to be living in this dunya for a very long time, or we don't think about death. It's not one of the things that come on top of our mind. And it's something that, it's in terms of funerals, something that we should all learn because we will need to use these rulings, these fiqh rulings on others when they pass away, and they will be used on us as well. And when we learn the things that are from the fiqh of funerals, and the picture becomes more clear, especially when we're writing our will, or what we're writing our last will, what we want to put inside. We want to make sure that we, if we're living in a country that's not Muslim, we want to make sure that we put the things that are in according to Islam. So the only way to do that is if you study how should a person be treated when he passes away, etc. So the author, rahimahullah, he starts off by saying that if a person, his death is certain, so if you are certain that this person has passed away, right? Then there are some things that need to be done. Number one is his eyes should be closed, and this is because the Prophet ﷺ did this to Abu Salama when he passed away. When he passed away, he closed his eyes, and the reason is because the eyes, they follow the angels of death. When the angels of death come and take your soul out, right, your eyes, you can see them, right? You can see the other barrier, the other life, and your eyes will follow it. And the reason why we close the eyes, so that a person is not on is not left on a state which looks uncomfortable. He doesn't the dead person, he's not in a state where he looks a bit weird or off, right? In that state, right? You close his eyes so that it doesn't look in a different manner, right? In a manner that's not pleasing, right? Or not asserting to others. Number two is that his jaws should be tied, right? And that's why you'll see a lot of times dead bodies when they're washing someone, or prior to that, right? They would have a bandage tying the jaws closed, especially if the mouth is open, right? The jaws should be tied closed, and that is to prevent from anything going inside, especially like air, and air would go inside sometimes if you don't tie it, and it would bubble up or it would swell up the belly. And that's something that we try to avoid, right? Number three is a mirror or a heavy object. What is meant here is a heavy object should be placed on his abdomen, his stomach. And the reason for this is so that his belly does not swell and get swollen up with air, right? So what should be done prior to death? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, instruct your dying ones. So when the person's on the deathbed, right? You have a person in the hospital, or you're lying next to someone, or you're there and the person is going through the pains of death. What do you do? The Prophet ﷺ said, instruct your dying ones to say, La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. And in another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever says La ilaha illallah, whoever's last kalima is La ilaha illallah, he will enter Jannah. So saying La ilaha illallah to assert their tawheed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to assert that they will enter Jannah inshaAllah. And that is the last thing that a person should say before he passes away. So if you're speaking to him and he speaks to you, then you instruct him to say La ilaha illallah. And then that should be it. If he speaks to you again, then you should renew it again. Right? You should renew it again. So a person that's in that stage, we should not be speaking to them vainly and speaking to them about worldly matters. Rather, we should instruct them to say La ilaha illallah, and continue, in that way of doing, dhikr of Allah. And it should be done gently and in a kind manner, right? You don't want to be, commanding someone harshly, because sometimes when you do that, the person may feel a different way and he may not say it because you're commanding him, right? You tell him gently so that he says it, right? And this is, the main thing that a person should be done when he passes away. It is also recommended to remind them of writing a will or indicating that their will, and to make them face the Qibla while lying on the right side. If there is no room, to position their feet towards the Qibla while lifting if there is no room, to position their feet towards the Qibla while lifting their head up a little and facing it with their faces, right? So, for example, the Qibla is, if we're facing the Qibla here, then, we lie them down to the Qibla, right? On your right side. If there's not enough room, then you sit them down and you have their feet facing the Qibla and you have them facing like this, right? That is what is recommended by some of the fuqaha. It is also recommended to give them sips of water or any other drink as needed to moisten their lips so it does not become too dry. Now, what should be done to the body? When a body passes away, the scholars have said that the entire body, the first thing that should be done is the entire body. Once you're sure that the person is passed away, you cover the entire body with a cloth, right? You cover him with a cloth from his head to toe. Now, the only exception is if the person is in ihram and he isn't doing hajj or umrah, then you don't cover his face, his head, because he's not allowed to cover his head while in ihram if it's a male, right? And you see, if you ever pray in Janazah at the haram in Mecca, you would see that they would leave the face open when they're praying the Janazah on those that pass away, and you will be able to see their face, right? And if any relatives or friends come to the funeral or they come to visit and the dead is there, then it is permissible for them to open the face and kiss the head, just like Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu did to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he passed away. So it is permissible to do a little bit of viewing. If a person comes, a relative, a close relative, a friend, he wants to see him before he finally departs in his grave, he can open it and see if he can kiss his head, etc. These are permitted things to do. The author rahimahullah, he goes on to say, فَإِذَا أَخَذَ فِي غَسْلِهِ سُتِرَتْ عَوْرَتُهُ. And now he's talking about the washing. So he says that when they start to wash him, his awrah should be covered. So when they start to wash the body, the awrah should be covered, right? ثُمَّ يَعْصُرُ بَطْنَهُ عَصْرًا رَقِيقًا ثُمَّ يَلُفَّ عَلَى يَدِهِ خِرْقَةً فَيُنَجِّيهِ. Then he says that his abdomen should be squeezed gently. So his stomach should be squeezed gently, and whatever has been left in his stomach will come out. And at this time, after that, the one that is washing him, the one that is doing the washing should wrap his hands with a cloth. So if he has a cloth or gloves, something like that, and then he should wash the private areas of the person. And then ثُمَّ يَتَوَضَّعُهُ, then he should make wudu for him. So then he makes a wudu for him. And he should wash his head and his beard. ثُمَّ يَغْسِلُ رَأْسَهُ وَلِحْيَتَهُ. So he washes his head and his beard as well. Okay. Now, when should we start the process of the funeral? The Prophet ﷺ commanded us to hasten the starting of the funeral, when he said ﷺ, أَسْرِعُوا الْجَنَازَةِ. So when we're starting this process, this is something that we should do as soon as possible. We should not delay the washing of the dead and the funeral process. We should start it as soon as possible, as soon as we're able to. If we're able to do it the same day, then we do it the same day, and we get the funeral done the same day. Right? Also, the scholars have mentioned that it is preferable to bury the deceased where he died, right? And you should not move the body out of town to a different town or different country, unless that was part of the person's will. So if it is part of the person's will, it is permissible. However, the preference is given to the exact spot where he died. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ, he was buried in his house where he passed away, the exact literal spot where he passed away. Right? It is also important to note that that his debts should be paid off right away. So his debt should be paid off right away, and also his funeral rights should be paid from his wealth. Right? And we'll go into more details when we talk about the chapter of fara'id, the chapter of inheritance, and what money, how the money should be distributed. What are the first things that should be paid off before the money is distributed to the families in a later chapter, inshallah. Right? Washing, shrouding, praying over the dead are all communal obligations, so they are part of the obligation of the community, and it should be, it takes precedence over all superiority deeds, so that this person, it is a communal obligation to get the person washed and his funeral rites done, right? So it is wajib for the community to do so, right? It is wajib for the community to do so. The author, rahimahullah, he goes on to explain how to wash the body. He says, so you wash the body bima'in wa sidrin. So he says here, ثُمَّ يَغْسِلُ رَأْسَهُ وَلِحْيَتَهُ, then he washes his head and his beard with water that has some cedar ground leaves in it from the lote tree, right? ثُمَّ شِقَّهُ الْأَيْمَنِ ثُمَّ الْأَيْسَرِ, then he washes his right side and then his left side. ثُمَّ يَغْسِلُ كَذَلِكَ مَرَّةً ثَانِيًا وَثَالِثًا, and then he washes his entire body a second and a third time. يُمَرُّ فِي كُلِّ مَرَّةٍ يَدَهُ فَإِنْ خَرَجَ مِنْهُ شَيْءٍ غَسَلَهُ وَسَدَّهُ بِقُطْنٍ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَمْسِكُ فَبِطِينٍ حُرٍّ وَيُعِيدُ وُضُوءَهُ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَنْقَ بِثَلَاثٍ زَادَ إِلَى خَمْسٍ أَوْ إِلَى سَبْعٍ. So then he, rahimahullah, he says, each time that you wash the body, he should press his stomach with his hand. If something comes out of his private parts, then he should wash the filth off. Then he should block, his anus with a piece of cotton, and if it does not stay, then with clay. And then he should repeat his wudu every time something comes out of his body. If washing 3 times does not suffice the cleaning, then he can increase it to 7 times. ثُمَّ يُنَشِّقُهُ بِثَوْبٍ, then he should dry him with a piece of cloth. وَيَجْعَلُ طِيبٍ فِي مَغَابِنِهِ وَمَوَاضِعِهِ, and then he should be applied to the folds of his skin and the spots of prostration. وَإِن طَيَّبَهُ كُلَّهُ, and if he applies perfume to his entire body, it would be good. كَانَ حَسَنًا. وَيُجَمِّرُ أَكْفَانَهُ, and he should scent his shroud with incense. Right? وَإِن كَانَ شَارِبُهُ أَوْ أَظْفَارُهُ طَوِيلَةً أَخَذَ مِنْهُ. And if his mustache or nails were long, then he should trim them. وَلَا يُسَرِّعُ شَعْرَهُ. And he should not comb his hair. وَالْمَرْأَةُ يُضْفَرُ شَعْرَهَا ثَلَاثَ قُرُونٍ. And the woman should have her hair braided into 3 braids. وَيُسْدَلُ مِنْ وَرَائِهَا. And it should be placed behind her. So this is the description of how the body should be washed and what the proceedings are for a janazah. We will end here, inshallah. And tomorrow, inshallah, we'll talk about the shrouding and we'll go into some more details in that. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.